Welcome to Greenhouse Grower to Grower, the podcast where we talk to growers from across the greenhouse industry about market trends, innovation, their biggest challenges and opportunities, and more. I'm Brian Sparks, editor of Greenhouse Grower. If you've listened to past episodes of our podcast, you've noticed that most of our guests have been from larger greenhouse operations. We wanted to take a different approach this time and share the story of Urban Bud City-Grown Flowers, a St. Louis-based company that emerged from the shell of an abandoned greenhouse to become a favorite supplier of cut flowers in their community. I recently spoke with Mimo Davis, who co-founded Urban Buds with Miranda Dushak. We had a lively conversation about her path from social work to floriculture, how the company emerged from the COVID-19 pandemic stronger than ever, and a lot more. Here's our conversation. Why don't we get started by just talking about Urban Buds, how and why the company was formed and kind of what your goals are, who your primary customer base is.
Yeah, so Urban Buds was, we actually found the property and bought it in 2012. This was, and we didn't have any of this information, but it has an old glass greenhouse that was condemned and vandalized right here in the city of St. Louis.
Oh, wow.
I mean, when we first saw it and walked into it, literally glass was crunching under our feet. It had been abandoned for like 9 years. And, so it became a party spot for kids, and glass panes were broken everywhere. And it was really in dilapidated condition. And, but when I walked into it for the first time, I immediately saw what we have today here. Which is we have one glass greenhouse and 1, 2, 3 high tunnels. Two of those high tunnels are heated, and we sit on an acre lot. We have an acre here in production in this heart of St. Louis, right in the city. It's a very residential neighborhood. We have neighbors directly across the street. But what's interesting about this property is that it dates back to the late 1800s.
Wow.
It was always a flower farm.
Okay.
So, it's like what's old is new. So what happened was, and the city literally grew up around it, and we bought the last remaining piece of it. I mean, literally the city grew up around it. We captured the last remaining piece.
Okay.
Yeah, so after we bought it, we found out all this history that it was called Held's Florist. And it's really funny because their tagline was "Go to Held's Florist," right? So it has this really rich history. They used to grow the flowers here, as a lot of those old growers used to do, and sell to the St. Louis community. And they gave it up in the late 90s, I think, and it changed hands a couple times, and then it just got condemned. So when we took it over, there was just the greenhouse and some land, and we put up all the high tunnels, and have progressively grown the business. We sell about 80 varieties of cut flowers, and year round. We do winter production. We believe it's really important for us as cut flower growers to do season extension work, because if you think of all the major floral holidays, when are they? And if we didn't do season extension, we would we would enter the marketplace around June, right? And that is basically when all those big events are over. If you think about it, it starts with Valentine's Day, and then it goes into all the other holidays, Mother's Day, Easter. They're all, before June, So it just made sense for us to, that's a lot of money to leave on the table.
Right.
And and I love winter growing, and it's one of my favorites. Right now we have blooming freesia, ranunculus, anemones, eucalyptus, tulips.
Wow.
What else is out there? Yeah, that's just a little bit of what's going on.
Okay.
So we just it's really interesting because we're doing this on a really small scale,
Yeah.
intensive, excuse me, very intensive growing methods.
Right.
And this works for cut flowers because cut flowers are planted so intensively, so that they can, we plant really closely, and that gives us a straight, erect stem that we really need for our industry.
Before we go any further, I do want to take a step back just a little bit and talk about your own background and then how that contributed to the formation of the company. And especially, I know you've got involvement with the association, especially cut flower growers, how that ties in as well.
Yeah, my own background. Wow. Okay, so you ready for it?
Oh, yeah.
I was actually a social worker in New York City,
Okay.
working with street kids, knew nothing about growing plants, zero. I mean, zero in 1989. And and basically my mother started dating a guy in Missouri who and I was living in a studio apartment, paying $1,500 a month, living the great life, walking out the door. I was that girl, Marlo Thomas in New York City. So um and my mom started dating this guy, and she told him that she liked plants, that she loved plants,
Yeah.
but she traveled a lot. She really meant like a pothos sitting in a pot on a desk. Okay, that's what she really meant.
Right.
So they got married, and my mom was going to move from New York City to Jefferson City, Missouri. And as a wedding present, he bought her a house that had, from a master gardener, that had 132 rose bushes in the backyard,
Oh, wow.
and a lean-to greenhouse attached to the house that was packed with plants.
Hmm.
Okay. I flew out for the wedding, and I'll never forget it. My mom grabbed my hand and she walked me into the greenhouse, in that little lean-to greenhouse, and she said, "You don't know what any of this stuff is, but don't let anything die," because I was going to house sit for them while they went on their honeymoon. I was going to stay there for the week.
Yeah.
And I hadn't got my mom a wedding present yet. And so what I did that week was that I broke off little leaves of everything, and I drove around to nurseries to try and make my mom a little scrapbook in identifying what um what the plants were,
Right.
to help her along after I left. In that week, I totally fell in love with, I didn't have a name for it. Agriculture, floriculture. I don't know what this is, but wow, I'm so into it. And while I was in Missouri, I got a newspaper, and I looked at the real estate, and for what I was paying in rent in New York City in 1989, I could buy a farm, 15-acre farm with a house on it. Okay. I go from a studio apartment to a 15-acre farm with a house on it. I was
It's a
like,
bit of a
okay.
change. Yeah.
I was like, okay. And I did it. And,
Hmm.
and I did not know anything about what I was doing, absolutely nothing.
Okay.
But it was a major, it was in my 30s. It was a major, what is that called? The midlife crisis,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And I did this thing. I mean, all my friends in New York were like wanting to do interventions on me. They were like, "Are you okay?" I mean, so yeah. So then I, didn't know anything. I didn't know that I could go, be a wolfer on a farm somewhere. I didn't know that there weren't workshops then. We're talking about 1989, and there weren't
Yeah.
all these opportunities to learn. The only way I knew to learn was to retool myself by education.
Hmm.
So I went back to school, and got a degree in plant and soil science.
Okay.
And while working there, while going to school there, a person came to a classroom and did a lecture, and I was like, I'm not learning anything that I want to learn here in this educational institution, but here's this guy who has this plant nursery, and long story short, I talked to him after the class, and he hired me.
Nice.
I I worked for him. It was a Missouri wildflower nursery.
Okay.
Mervyn Wallace there, and he was such a mentor to me. I was there for like 4 years with him,
Okay.
and every day he would give me a flat of plants. He said, "Go plant this on your farm," and I did. And so 4 years later, I was doing this stuff like making little bouquets for friends' birthdays um and just making bouquets for friends, no big deal.
Right.
And then in the 5th year, I drove up Merv's driveway and he was like, you know what? Taught you all I can. You don't need me. You need to go do something with your farm.
Huh.
And I was like, wow, okay. And so that year I started in the Columbia Farmers Market.
Okay.
Um and selling cut flowers. And
Mm-hmm.
then and nobody was doing this. It was no. This is 30 years ago. Okay,
Right.
I mean it was. I mean some people were doing it, but you know in Missouri, mid Missouri, it wasn't a big thing. So then I did a bucket truck and I drove around to florist shops.
Mm-hmm.
I did the farmers market. I did and I did drove around and sold wholesale to florists.
Okay.
Um, And then I started to come into the city. I was 2 hours outside of St. Louis, and I
Mm-hmm.
started to come into the city, and I had a staff. I was running then 4 acres of cut flowers,
Okay.
and I had a staff, and I was doing it alone. And wow, it just wasn't sustainable for me. I was driving into St. Louis 2 hours one way. And I hadn't even made a sale, yet. And
Huh.
I was getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to make it to farmers market on time, and it was just wasn't sustainable.
Sure.
I had ended up in a ditch, because I fell asleep, and you know, so by that time I gotten a little bit. People started to know about me a little bit, and I started to in the winter do the conference circuit, and people would ask me to speak
Mm-hmm.
on cut flowers. And I was in North Carolina, and they were like, "Hey, we need more African American women um, in this industry. Have you thought about, getting some letters behind your name?" And I was
Okay.
like, "Well, no, I hadn't really thought about it, but I was a little burnt out, and I still had the farm,
Right.
and and I rented it out, and I went and I took a break and went and got my master's. The program was really to go on to get a PhD, but after my master's, I was like, I'm a farmer. No, no, no. We're gonna stop here,
Yeah.
and so then I came back to St. Louis, and a job opened up working with cooperative extension. I got this job working in the urban core as a specialist, an urban ag specialist,
Yeah.
helping people set up community gardens and blah blah blah. And that was great. I was still getting my hands in the dirt, but I was a cut flower farmer, and and I still wasn't really happy. And so I met one of my coworkers who also wanted to farm, and I was like, wow, okay, you want to farm? I want to farm. Why don't we farm? But I didn't want to go back to my farm that I still owned, right?
Right.
And through her work in extension, someone called and said, "Hey, there's this old greenhouse in the city. It's been dilapidated, condemned. Do you know anybody who wants to buy it?" Because
Yeah.
we kept talking about how we were going to farm, but I didn't want to go back out to the farm. I
Right.
didn't want to be that far away. So St. Louis is where the marketplace was, and this is where I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, condemned and vandalized, literally. I mean, we broke into the place, to come see it. I mean, we could just walk in here. And immediately I was like, saw the vision
Mm-hmm.
immediately. And my business partner now, Miranda, and I, neither one of us had any kind of building experience, plumbing, what, we knew nothing about what we were doing.
Right.
And we took a huge leap of faith and said, we're going to learn. And we found people to help us and move it along. And we wrote several grants, especially all of our high tunnels are came from a specialty crop block grant
Okay.
from the USDA.
Yeah.
So we see this as kind of our experimental farm. We're always trialing something. And yeah, that's a long story, but that's how I got here.
I got it. I mean, that's so amazing that you walk into something and just to see the beauty in something that probably at the time just looks so dilapidated and worn down, but you've got a vision for, we can do something with this. That's really amazing.
I saw it immediately, and it was in the little spot here. Um, the original spot that we bought has this land that has never had a house on it. In the city, when you farm, you have to think of certain considerations, right? And this
Right.
was virgin land, right? So, that was a huge thing with the glass greenhouse. And I just saw exactly what we have today back in 2012.
Yeah.
And so we've been, plotting along. We sell now during the, we originally sold the florists in the St. Louis area. And it's great because I stopped doing the bucket truck
Hmm.
and they go to the wholesaler, so they pick up here too, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I'm in the city, so I don't have to do the bucket truck anymore. They pick it up off the farm. Um, and then the pandemic happened. So we were doing Tower Grove Farmers Market here in St. Louis. We called it our three-legged stool of sustainability.
Okay.
The farmers market, the weddings and events, and then we had a third. I forgot what the third was.
Hmm.
We had a third. I don't even remember what it was. Then the pandemic happened, right? And
Yeah.
so the weddings were gone. And so direct to florist, the weddings, and the market. Those are the three legs of sustainability.
Okay.
Because we didn't want to ever put all of our eggs in one basket,
Right.
right?
Yeah. That's
And
smart. Yeah.
but then the pandemic happened, and I was like, and I was hearing things about it, and like I said, we had stopped the bucket truck, um, and floors were picking up here, but I was hearing these rumors that the city was going to shut down, and I was like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
So I was curious, and I loaded up my truck with the flowers, and I was like, hey, I'm going to drive around this week so that I could see my floors, what's going on. And that day, I think I sold $12 in flowers,
Huh.
and they look like deer in the headlights,
Wow.
and so I came home with so I was, driving home, and I was like, okay, at least we have the farmers market.
Yeah.
They're not going to close that. And I came home, and Miranda met me in the driveway, and she said, hey, I just got a letter from the market that they're closing the market.
Oh boy.
And at that time, this is March, right? And I said we do season extension. So our greenhouses are swelling with product,
Yeah.
right? Tulips, anemones, ranunculus, all of the stuff. I mean, they are ready to go. And they closed up. And so our weddings were gone, the market was gone, and our florists were gone.
Oh wow.
And we were sitting here with all this product.
Yeah.
And I hire young millennials, right? Okay. So we set the staff down. Miranda and I set the staff down, and I was like, look, there's no secret bank account. There's, no parents to call.
Yeah.
The only way this business operates, the only way we stay in this is by selling these flowers.
Hmm.
And my staff, that day got online and opened up our online store.
Oh wow. Okay. Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in our farmers market customers, oh my God, the order, $30 bouquet at farmers market became $150 order
Huh.
because they were home alone, right?
Yeah.
They were home. They couldn't go out to dinner. They couldn't go to the movies. They couldn't travel, and they were freaked out. So they would say, I'm going to get some flowers, and I'm going to get some for Betty Sue too, because she's depressed, right? So, I mean, and the letters that were left in our buckets from our customers, they gave us gift cards.
Huh.
Hey, you're really getting us through this pandemic. This
Yeah.
is wonderful. And so we started this business called Petals Off Our Porch.
Okay.
It was a contactless pickup where they could just pull the car up, jump out, and grab their bouquet, which was on a stand that we had made in front of the shop.
Right.
Okay. They had a pickup time, and they just pull up, pick it up, and we'd wave through them through the window.
Yeah.
And the notes and the love and the gift cards and oh my goodness. I mean, it's overwhelming. our farmers market community
Mhm.
got us through that pandemic.
Wow.
The market eventually opened because then there was that, essentials, they were considered essential because people have to get food, and it was
Yeah.
outdoor market. And so it eventually reopened, but that online store continues to this day. I
I
mean,
I mean, I remember covering this market back, then when the pandemic was first, really getting into high gear, and just the ability for, I'll say a smaller operation like yours to be able to pivot quickly, was amazing. And that kept so many companies in business where, I mean, you said you've got plants that are sitting in the greenhouse and that's your income. You can't afford to just let them go to waste. And, while other
right.
growers are trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do if my entire customer base, for example, is independent garden centers who I can't sell to right now? That ability, at somebody of the scale such as yours to be able to pivot is really important, I think.
Yeah. Oh, it was amazing. It was, and I mean, we have an email newsletter that goes every week. And man, when we send out that email newsletter, I just hear dings on the phone. Ding, 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 ding. I mean, it's still working. I mean, we've kept our online sales for
Yeah.
sure. And we still do the Tower Grove Farmers Market. We don't sell to florists that much because during the pandemic, our customer base boomed,
Right.
right? And so it didn't make, we were selling out farmers market and trying to do the wholesale and sell, the wholesale market was taking a lot of the flowers. We were selling out at retail, and
Right.
that didn't make any sense.
Hmm.
If we could sell, we do still sell to a couple of florists, but it's mostly retail.
Okay. So what's your biggest market share right now then? Is it the online? Is it the farm market or?
Farmers market.
Okay.
Right now, because it's winter, it's the online sales. In
Hmm.
the summer, it's the farmers market.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's such an amazing story of resilience to be able to get to where you are today. Um,
Our community in St. Louis is phenomenal. I mean,
okay.
just, yeah.
So when you look at where you are as a company today, so what are the big things that you're working on now as you get into 2024, and your plans for the upcoming year then?
Um, well, we're moving into workshops. It's something we did early on before the pandemic, and now
Okay.
this will be our first year that we're turning back to workshops and teaching others how to do what we've done here.
Yeah.
Um, and we're really excited about our upcoming workshops. We have Susan McCleary of Passion Flower Sue coming in. That's going to do a big workshop, 2-day workshop. So
Sure.
we're doing workshops to teach people floristry and floriculture.
Okay. Okay. You mentioned earlier, essentially almost having to learn this industry from scratch, really. So I wonder how that translates to today then. What do you do? What does Miranda do? What does your company do to keep up with the latest information, not just on floriculture, you know, as a science or an industry, but then running a floriculture type business?
Now, I'm the vice president of the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers.
Hmm.
And we had our annual conference this past fall, and it was here. Yay! I mean, it's a big conference of
Yeah.
400, the association has 2,000 2,000 plus members. And so in the conference travels every year to different places, and we got picked. And so it was a lot of fun. And so the conferences keep us up to date. The AFCFG is a wonderful organization,
Hmm.
are very supportive. I mean, I don't know where I would be without that organization, really.
Okay.
Um, I I went to my first conference early on years ago, 30 years ago, and that conference put me 3 years ahead of what I learned at that conference, put me, I believe, 3 years ahead of where I would have been, you
Wow.
know? Um, so yeah, I mean, the guy, at my very first conference, we were talking in the bar, everybody goes to the bar after the sessions, and
Yep.
we were talking at the bar, and he was like, "Who are you?" And because I went to the grower school, and I couldn't believe it. I was in a room with all these people just like me. I never knew that this existed. And then my hand kept popping up. And so he said, "Who are you? Tell me about you." and I told him a little bit about me. And then he got a bar napkin out and he wrote Lysianthus across the top of it. And every step I needed to do to grow that crop. I had
Oh,
my
wow.
first greenhouse, and I was early on. I was in my maybe second year, and I was used to making like $300 at a farmer's market. Da, da, da. You know, I followed those instructions, and that year, that summer, I made $5,000 on a 100-foot bed.
Yeah.
And that would have never have happened if I didn't have the association as the my rock in
Yeah.
this industry. And it's really how I stay in tune of what's going on. I follow other, influencers on Instagram that I really respect and
Hmm.
admire. Yeah, that's how I kind of stay current. We
It's
stay
amazing
current.
that connection to growers. I would imagine too, just to various sizes. I mean, you could be talking with somebody across the country who's 10 times the
Right,
scale that you are, but there's something that
right.
I would imagine you can each learn from each other.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. I was really nervous, to have all these big growers from across the country come in to see my little 1 acre farm. Our farm is as big as some of their front lawns. Okay.
Yeah.
So but man, we do learn from each other, no matter the size. The
Hmm.
size is not the relevance. It's the growing practices that is, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, it's really an amazing organization.
Okay. Um, as you've gotten to this point, what would you say are some of the biggest or most important lessons that you've learned along the way? Again, both tied to growing plants, but then also the process of running a business.
Only commit to what you're capable of doing.
Hmm.
Start small. You know, what you put forth to the public, it is memorable. They don't forget, and so start small, know what you're doing. I really don't believe like first year flower farmers are like, I want to sell to florists. It's like, no, why don't you just grow a year? Start off small, try to do a farmer's market because there's really no commitment there, right?
Yeah.
Florists need consistency. The more consistent you are with the florist, the more dependable. The more dependable you are with the florist, the more dependent they become on you, right?
Hmm.
So, start off small is a big one. Don't make commitments that you can't fulfill. Um, don't don't sell junk. Um,
Yeah.
um, Yeah, those are a few. What else as a business owner? Yeah, just don't jump ahead of yourself
Hmm.
financially. We took out no loans,
Okay.
0 loans for
Smart.
our rehab. We both were working for extension, like I said, and we took $1,000 each month out of our paycheck and did a little bit more and did a little bit more and did a little bit more until we have what we have today.
Hmm.
Um, you know, really reach out, build your team. And when I
Hmm.
say that, I mean from your tax accountant, to your barber, they you need to have all those people on your team. And everybody wants to be on a winning team, right? So
Yeah.
everybody, our USDA people, they when they come for a site visit, they're like, wow, you guys really did it. This is really cool. Da 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 da. Wow, this is amazing. I mean, everybody wants to be on a winning team. So just build your team, that are outside of the farm, right? On my team is the alderman who lives a half a block up the road,
Hmm.
who, runs city government, is part of city government, our tax accountant, our plumber, you know, our heating and cooling people, they are, on speed dial, right? I mean, and they know when I call that I'm not calling the chat, right? I
Yeah.
mean, so they know and they come, because they're like, think this, and we send them home flowers for their wives, our plumbers, and our garbage people. We gave Valentine's, we gave our garbage collector a bouquet. I still get choked up about it, but he was like, wow, we haven't seen you all around it for quite some. Miranda gave him the bouquet, and we haven't seen you all around in a while. And he was like, oh, thank you for these flowers. My wife died, like
Oh
a
my.
month ago, and I'm gonna take these to her grave. It was on
Yeah.
Valentine's, it was just, oh my God, I mean, just, it's everybody's on the team,
Yeah. Well, and
you
again,
know?
going back to the time during the pandemic, I would, those personal connections that you make, I mean, just on that personal level that you just mentioned, I mean, that's critical and that could, really make somebody's day. I would think also too, just, as we're navigating through the pandemic and dealing with, things like supply chain issues, just having those consistent relationships and close contacts with both your customers and your vendors is also got to be important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So important. It's just, and that's really what's kept us going is the support of our community, the
Yeah.
support of our team, the support of our staff. It's a lot to run this. It's not, even as small as we are, um, it's a lot of people who
Yeah.
make this thing go round.
Yeah. Well, and two, I would think as you're selling, directly to consumers at farmers markets, that ability to be able to talk directly with your end consumer and get an idea of what they're looking for. And if they want this, okay, we don't have this now, but is this something we should be doing to try and get this so that we can provide that to our customer then?
Hey, hey, here's so many. I read, on Instagram, on flower forums, people are like, my customer at farmers market today asked me if I grew all of these. What a stupid question. It's like, no, that's not a stupid question. That's the opportunity for you to step into the conversation.
Yeah.
You know, that's that. Yeah, we can grow these flowers. We're 2 miles up the road. On Tennessee Avenue, we have a acre flower farm. I mean, that's an opening for a conversation
Yeah.
about local and sustainable and all that stuff. So you got to be a certain person to be able to be in this retail business. I think
Hmm.
you really need to know yourself and really be a people person, be able to, step out, at least with, I think growing anything really, it doesn't really matter. You got to be able to communicate.
Yeah. Well, speaking of growing, I mean, as you look ahead, I mean, are there any plans in the works and I love the name Urban Buds, by the way. That's such a great name for a company.
It's so funny. I'll tell you, we named it Urban Buds. And then, when cannabis started to blow up,
Hmm.
people were calling us, hey, you got any Hawaiian gold? We're like, what? And we kind of we changed the name. So we went from Urban Buds, City Grown Flowers.
Hmm.
Okay. I know that so people have a clearer idea.
Yeah.
But yeah. Thank you for yeah, we love the name.
Sure. So, I mean, as you look ahead, I mean, do you have any plans for further growth, either with, expanding customer base? Okay. Okay.
Expanding the customer base, yes. Growing the farm, no.
Hmm.
I mean, we're gonna stay right where we are for a while. We have
Yeah.
done a lot of expansion. Every year we put up a tunnel and
Okay.
you know, and wrote a grant or did something. And no, we're putting our energy into now building more of that customer base through our workshops, through our sales, through our marketing.
Sure.
Yeah.
I know you hear today that building a team is so important and so much of a challenge because, people tend to be, especially young people, as you talk about, are moving a lot from one job to another. What do you do to kind of ensure that that team stays with you and is happy to keep coming back?
Yeah, I like to find out what their interests are,
Hmm.
right? So I've never ever in my life been interested in weddings. Okay, that's not me. I've never wanted to do weddings. And yeah, I'm just not the person to look at your swatch. I don't have time for that. I don't have
Right.
patience. And I had an employee who was like, I want to do the weddings. And I was like, and he had been here a couple of years, and I was looking for ways to keep him engaged.
Yeah.
And he was here for 8 years doing weddings, right? Doing all of our weddings. And he just now, last December, opened up his own floral shop up the street.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, and he had been here for 8 years. Um, it's interesting because all of my crew are interested in coming back this year.
Hmm. Nice. Nice.
So I think that is just finding out what their interests are, not seeing them as human beings with families and lives and knowing that it's hot in the summer and you got to be take that into consideration on
Yeah.
speed and what they're doing and just caring for them, like human beings. And yeah, and our head crew leader now, he's been here, I think 3 years, three
Okay.
years. Um, so, and people love this work. It's who doesn't like being among the flowers?
Yeah.
But it's brutal. It's hot. It's buggy. It's not the dream. Like I see these pictures of bicycles in these flower fields. We've never had a bicycle in the field. Okay. It's brutal work.
Yeah.
We start early because flowers like to be harvested early in the morning. It's just how things roll.
Mm-hmm. The final question I have is, as you look ahead, what excites you the most about the future of this industry that you're in?
Since the pandemic, it has boomed. It has, you know, when I started 30 years ago, people were like, what's this stuff you have on this truck? What is this? What do you mean you grew these flowers? And now people look for local flowers. They look for local. It's local as in. It has become a big thing, and this industry is booming. And I just love all these new growers coming into this industry and trying it out. A lot of people have dreams. They're following their dreams, and they may not work out. Some people roll in and then roll out because they realize it's not the bicycle in the field that they thought it was. That it's actual really hard work. But yeah, that local flowers are really coming into their being, and I love that.
Thanks for joining us. You can learn more at greenhousegrower.com. Please subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, and please leave us a rating as it helps other podcast listeners find the show.